All right, we're just getting word that the CEO of Univision, who of course the employer for Jorge Ramos, is saying Trump has demonstrated complete disregard for Ramos and his viewers in a statement. We'll bring you more of that if we get it. Joining me now is Maria Hinojosa, anchor and executive producer of NPR's Latino USA, and MSNBC contributor Josh Barrow, correspondent for The Upshot at the New York Times. Maria, there's been a kind of interesting response to what happened last night. You would, I think, expect journalists to kind of close ranks around a fellow reporter who was thrown out, but a lot of people felt that Ramos was making a spectacle of himself, or he was jumping out of turn. What's your reaction both to what happened and the reaction to it?
Well, to see what happened actually was very distressing, frankly, as a journalist. I mean, look, journalists, rough and tumble, you guys. I mean, we shout out questions. We understand that. I haven't spoken to Jorge. I don't know if he had tried to reach out to Trump before and was just, you know, silenced and given a no answer. We know that Trump did the same thing to Jose Diaz-Balart, basically silencing him. So my response to reporters is, yeah, okay, we understand that this is sometimes what happens in a news conference. But what's distressing to me, actually, Chris, and it saddens me to have to say this, but if we were to change the scenario, and Lester Holt or esteemed New York Times columnist Charles Blow were asking a question, and that security guard took on those esteemed African-American journalists the way Jorge Ramos was taken on, I would like to see what the reaction would be then. What if it was Katie Couric who was asking a question about Trump's position on women and some of the comments that people believe are sexist? What if Tom Brokaw was trying to ask a question? Would that same attitude be? So what I'm hearing from Latino journalists is that this is a moment that is problematic on the part of a presidential candidate. And again, I go back to what Jorge Ramos said. He's never, like me, been thrown out of a news conference in our entire careers. And then for this to happen from a presidential candidate to throw out an American citizen journalist, it's distressing, honestly.
To what Maria just said, Josh, part of what I think that there's a little bit of a culture gap happening here, and I've been sort of trying to think hard about this, which is, you know, Trump is saying things that are really horrible things to say about a group of people, okay? And I think there's a little bit of a remove of just how like offensive that is in a media that is not dominated by Latinos. And so I think the reaction is sort of refracted through that.
Well, but it's not just Latinos who Trump has said offensive things to or about. I think it's that Trump has said and done so many outrageous things over the last 2 months that people are no longer able to be shocked or surprised by it. And we've also watched as the media said over and over again, oh, this is the thing that does Trump in.
Right.
And it's not. And so now you can't just write Trump off because he does something awful, because the electorate's not writing him off. I thought this really interesting for something it demonstrated about Trump, which is how, you know, he has him thrown out and then brings him back in and has this 5-minute exchange with him. And it's this overall pattern in Trump's interactions with people where it's like he can be screaming at you 1 minute and you're in a horrible fight, and then it's back to business as usual from his perspective the next minute. I think that's part of why we're sort of numb to Trump having these interactions, because he can go back to having you right back in the press conference taking your questions.
Maria, can I play this clip last night? Because I do think that one of the things that's been clarifying is Trump saying, I want to deport the 11 million. That's my stated policy position. And other
Which, by the way, would bankrupt, by the way, just so we're clear, in terms of the economy, that idea, I mean, that's why, you know, as a businessman, really, because that would bankrupt us. That is what we as American citizens would have to basically pay to try to deport all that. So that is just an unrealistic economic argument instead of actually what would happen if you were to bring all these people into the American economy. But go ahead.
Now watch this. No, watch Ted Cruz get this question from Megyn Kelly and his response. Take a look.
Do the American citizen children of 2 illegal immigrants who are born here, the children, did they get deported under a President Cruz?
Megyn, I get that that's the question you want to ask. That's also the question every mainstream media liberal journalist wants to ask.
Well, why is it so hard? Why don't you just say yes or no?
Because, Megyn, we need to solve the problem.
I mean, that's a kind of amazing moment. Would you deport American citizens is the question. And Ted Cruz cannot say, no, of course I would not deport American citizens.
It's a historical moment. I happen to have been with some lawyers here in Chicago who were talking to me about an American citizen who was held in a detention center for over 2 years. So I know that people, I appreciate what you said, Chris, which is you're trying to understand the culture gap. There is a culture gap. Latinos are not present in the mainstream media. And so that statement made, which was go back to Univision or go back to Univision, for Latinos, as I'm hearing in my reporting, that's hate speak. Mm-hmm. And that actually opens the door for people to say the same thing to me because I was born in Mexico and I'm an American citizen and I grew up in the city of Chicago, more American through and through. But I know that what's going to happen is that people will say that, oh, go back to Mexico. And it's like, really? Is that where we are? Where it's like where you were born? It's not setting us forward. I don't really see a path forward, and I'm not really sure to what end. Because he's not going to be able to be elected unless he's got more than half of the Latino vote.
So that's the question in the primary, right? Is that is that the go get out of my country caucus? The question is, how big is the get out of my country caucus? That is the math right now.
It's definitely larger than the Hispanic vote in the Republican primary. I mean, Trump likes to point out that he's leading with Hispanics in the Republican primary. That's not that large a group, although I would note, Trump has a 75% disapproval rating among Hispanics. There are 54 million Hispanics in the U.S. That leaves, 13 million Hispanics or so with a positive view of Donald Trump, which I think he would point out is a lot of people.
Maria Hinojosa. I don't know where you're finding those Latinos who are saying that they like Donald Trump, but here's what I think. There's a saying in Spanish, te sale el tiro por la culata, which means that things backfire on you. Yes. And you know what? Without Latino voters, this could backfire on Donald Trump.
Maria Hinojosa.